Okay, this is the second video on how to write an essay. And just to catch you up to speed, on the other video, what we just did was we had a whole bunch of quotes and we narrowed our quotes down to 3 quotes, okay? And now what we're going to do is make an argument out of these 3 quotes. And the reason why we're going to be able to make an argument is because I found a common theme between this quote and another theme, and this quote, and this quote. And so what we are now going to do is and the common theme is being this liminal, or this middle stage, or this transitory stage, or this kind of like halfway point for Holden. He's stuck between being a child and being an adult. And so that's kind of what I want to argue now. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now make my argument. So what do I want to make for what's going to be my argument? So I would want to say Holden, knowing what I'm seeing here, Holden is stuck between being young and an adult, and being an adult, and being an adult. Okay, so that's a very basic sentence, okay? And as a result, we want to see a little bit more than that. This is not obviously good enough, okay? So, what more can we figure out from these quotes, okay? And this is where now we're going to look at the quotes and we're going to make a specific argument, okay? So, here we go. So starting off with this quote, "You had never seen so much more gore in your life. It partly scared me and it partly fascinated me. All that blood and all that sort of made me look tough." So Holden is fascinated. So Holden looks at destruction both with curiosity and with fear. Okay? Why? And so my question is him being stuck in between being an adult and being a child. This is one reason why he's stuck between being an adult and child. It's because he can't quite settle on his feelings, or his emotions are both. He's both afraid, and he's also he's curious. Okay, so he's afraid and he's curious. So Holden is both afraid of. So Holden, as a child, we'll do this as a child, is afraid of his inevitable future, but also he is curious about growing older. Okay? So that in itself is a pretty interesting argument that one can make. Okay, so now let's look at this one. It's really ironical because I'm 6'2.5" and I have gray hairs. I really do. And yet I still act sometimes like I was only 12 years old. Okay? So even here Holden looks older, but he even admits that he fakes he is faking it, right? He is faking it. Okay? So we have here that Holden looks older, but yet he even admits he is faking it. And in the third quote, I remember around 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was standing way the hell up on top of Thompson Hill, right next to this crazy cannon that was in this Revolutionary War and all. Oh, so another violent imagery, right? So Holden or violence, I would say violence in Holden symbolizes change and growing up. Okay, so now that what we do is, I'm going to just erase this because I just don't want to, it's unimportant. So what I'm going to do now is, now that we have our 3 quotes and then we have a cluster of connecting but not, they're loosely connected points, all I'm going to do is kind of cling them all together, connect them all together into one sentence, okay? So here's what it's going to look like. So, and this kind of takes some tinkering and playing with some wording, and a lot of it you could just do a simple list, but you could do other things as well, okay? So when we come up with this kind of a list, now where we have this kind of list of sentences of arguments, now let's kind of put them together, okay? So here I'm looking at Holden is stuck between being young and being an adult. Okay, once again, that's fine. Holden, as a child, is afraid of his inevitable future, but also he is curious about growing older. Okay, so Holden looks older, but he even admits that he is faking it. Violence in Holden symbolizes change and growing up. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my sentence in this. Actually, I might start it off with this. Okay? So, Holden as a child is afraid of the inevitable future, but he is also curious about growing older. However, concurrently, I would say, however, growing up entails, consists of certain violence and destruction in Holden's life. Okay, so now immediately what I can do is I've already knocked off this point, right? Which is, yeah, and now I've also knocked off this last point, okay? Now what I need to do is attach this third point right here, into this sentence, okay? So I'm going to read it again and see how I could fit this part into this part, okay? Holden, as a child, is afraid of his inevitable future, but also he is curious about growing older. However, growing up consists of certain violence and destruction in Holden's life. And I want to put, but he even admits that he is faking it. Okay, so maybe let's see where I could put that in here. Holden, as a child, is afraid of the inevitable future, but he's also curious about growing older. However, though he sometimes fakes, maybe I could say this, though Holden fakes being. Okay, so what I'm going to say here is, where Holden grows up, and that's so I'm going to put this sentence here. When Holden looks older, he even admits that he's faking it, right? So this idea of faking it, I'm going to put it in here. However, though Holden fakes being a grown-up, the violence and destruction. Then here, I would even now what I'm going to do is tweak this section around so it's going to now fit with this sentence. And so what I'm going to do now is take that out. And so I'm going to say, however, though Holden fakes being a grown-up, the violence in his life acts as a strong symbolic force of his inevitable march onto adulthood. Bam! So now I have a strong one argumentative sentence that argues these three these three points, quotes. So here it is in all its glory. Holden, as a child, is afraid of his inevitable future, but also he is curious about growing older. However, though Holden fakes being a grown-up, the violence in his life acts as a strong symbolic force of his inevitable march onto adulthood. So, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? What we have here. That's right. This is a thesis. Look at that. See how much we've done already from this video and this video? We've come up with our 3 quotes, and we've come up with a strong analysis. I'm going to erase this for clarity's sake. And we come up with a strong thesis, or an argumentative thesis that's going to wrap up and tell me each of these 3 things. And this thesis communicates the overarching fact of growing up and being stuck between being a child and being an adult, even though Holden fakes it, right? But we're also seeing that the violence acts as a strong symbolic force, even though he does fake it, okay? So look at that. We got our thesis, and that's kind of exciting stuff, all right? So next video, we are going to talk about how to start writing our paragraph in our essay. Toodles.